That said, I will shortly here hand it over to the man of the hour, Rahul Panchal. He's been in the industry over 15 years in injection molding, so we're very excited to have him here. He's got his master's and PhD in plastics engineering and polymer science from UMass Lowell. Obviously, if you're in the molding world, you know UMass Lowell and what comes out of that program. So very excited again here. But Rahul, he's got a nice presentation for us today. It's something I think a lot of people have asked about, in terms of in-mold sensing technology, and we've got the guy here that holds the patent on this technology. So we figured we'd connect everybody and see what we can all learn. So again, very excited. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm going to hand over to Weston here, our regional sales manager from the New England area and a portion of the Midwest as well. He's going to go through just how we're going to handle question and answer and kind of the logistics of this presentation, and then we'll get kicking. So thanks again.
All right, thanks, Bennett. Appreciate that introduction. As Bennett mentioned, we will have a Q&A section where we'll get to all the questions. However, we're going to reserve that till the end of the hour here after Rahul is done presenting. And what we'll ask you to do is send it through the Q&A section that's on the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Send it in to the host, if you will. That way they will come in directly to me and I can present them to Rahul when he has finished up the actual presentation portion of it. Outside of that, I guess we'll just let him take it away. Rahul, it's up.
Sure. Thank you, Weston, and thank you, Bennett. So I'm going to, as Rahul Panchal has mentioned, Bennett mentioned, introduced me. So I have over 15 years of experience in the injection molding. That's one of my passion. I did my master's and doctorate from UMass Lowell, University of Massachusetts Lowell, which is one of the best in the country for the plastics engineering. And this is something, the technology I developed as the part of my doctorate program. And then now I'm moving towards commercializing this technology with more features. So this is like a novel multivariate shrinkage sensing technology for injection molding, and its capability will move the US injection molding manufacturing towards the Industry 4.0, which is a very buzzword at this moment, and everyone is trying, but there is no specific technologies that can help for the true Industry 4.0. So it's just, if you want more information, you can go to my LinkedIn profile. It's being an engineer, there are several philosophy I have, and it's like one of the biggest philosophies, never never give up. So I always try, even I fail, I try. And just like failures is the first step to success. That's my philosophy, and that's how this entire technology came to from idea to the reality. And again, being an engineer, that I believe that there is a big misconception that engineer's job is the troubleshooting or the problem solving, and I think that engineer's job is a decision making, not the troubleshooting, or that troubleshooting is a small part of the decision making. So what is the Leonine technology right now besides this technology that we are in a process of developing the commercial level multivariate shrinkage sensor? We call it MVSS. You will hear that abbreviation quite a bit during the presentation at some point, which was developed using the National Science Foundation Small Business Innovation Research Grant, which is very competitive, out of maybe 5,000 companies, barely 100 or 150 companies receive this type of grant. That's other thing we have in a pipeline, or we are thinking, is to provide the technical consultation or the training in the injection molding, not just scientific injection molding that a lot of people are doing, that kind of a training, but more how to utilize the technology and how to perform the technology scouting, and maybe potentially recruiting support where take over all the technical aspect of the recruiting and just help. So in last few months, as like we all know, because of the COVID, was like staying at home, and one of target shooting is one of my most favorite hobby. And this is I just wanted to share or brag about my like skills. And Sunday, this was like my 50 feet distance shooting record. So at 1.3 second poster. So now we are going with these this entire technology is focused on the polymer injection molding. So why the polymer injection molding is very important? It's 33% of the plastics manufacturing is dedicated to polymer injection molding because of its ability to fabricate 3D complex part, ability to replace metal, and nowadays more and more new material innovations are happening that has the capability to replace metals. Wide range of polymers you can use, and it's a faster rate. So it's technically is a very high rate 3D printing technology, but you can use the functional component. But what is the polymer injection molding in US? So it is estimated that by 2023, US polymer injection molding revenue will be around $100 billion and at the growth of 6%. And that includes the raw material, mold, machines, everything, custom molding. So, and according to SPE, Society of Plastics Industry, it is estimated, I think it's 2 or 3 years back, it was estimated around 100,000 new molds every year are being built in USA, and 32,000 injection molding machines are operating continuously. But this number looks great or big, but there are it's a big contradiction. That amount of raw material being consumed versus you will see the finished products or the day-to-day we use, that ratio is very small. Then also the injection molding industry is shrinking, or it's not growing yet. It's supposed to. It should be there $1 trillion or over. Like 100,000 molds, the Japan itself makes more than 100,000 mold per year, which is maybe 10th size of the USA. The same with the Vietnam. They are operating 3 times more machines than USA, and in fact the newer machines. And the robotics, it's like mainly used as a labor assistant. It's vested capability. The custom molding is on a survival mode, and because of the outsourcing, because of the increasing cost and technology advancements are like in injection molding area is like dominated by the non-US companies. And there's a knowledge fragmentation. There is a process engineer level knowledge there's a huge gap. And there are major segments in USA. You can see that trend from 1970 to 2020, and it is very disturbing that you can look at that certain industry segment like electronics, communication, home appliances. They are almost 90% of that is being outsourced. They are coming back because of some of the material regulations or some of the havoc about certain material or the additives and everything. So it's coming back, but it's still if you look at right now, many people use the smartphone, computer, everything. Like all the components are being manufactured outside. Maybe they are assembled in USA. That's a different story, but still those plastics. So that's a big problem. If USA did not have the medical device and the automotive industry, not even USA, any country or any region, if they did not have an aerospace, defense, medical device, or automotive, their injection molding industry would collapse right away. because in US out of 100 billion, 70 billion or more is contributed by automotive and the healthcare. And it just because of the government regulations that not many companies are outsourcing. As long as the government is going to remove these regulations, and people will, US company will start making these components outside, it will collapse. So the target for any new technology should be these three industry: medical device, where the cost of the quality control is very high, where they are really struggling to reduce the cost of the quality. At the same time, they're also struggling to maintain the balance between the quality control, quality assurance, quality management, just because of how the knowledge is fragmented and the regulatory industry or the type of different classes of the different medical devices. They are first one to implement any new technology, like they try out, but not necessarily they will implement as a part of their manufacturing practices. A lot of medical standards are borrowed from the other industry. Same with, on the contrary, automotive has a huge range of part sizes, like from part size bigger than 3 feet to the smaller than maybe 1 centimeter or 10 millimeter. But often many of the components require the multi-stage finishing. They go through the painting, curing, surface treatment every time plastic part changes their dimensions or the characteristics, and that's the biggest headache in the automotive. But they are heavily dependent on the third-party manufacturers, like maybe the more like custom builders. And the aerospace and defense, which is very small, but still important and neglected in general. So what is still in these three industry segment, this growth is very high, especially in the automobile and the medical device, because of new materials, new therapy, new drugs. They are coming in the market. There are government regulations to increase the fuel efficiency. So there are a lot of components are being converted into the plastics. So one of the strategy is using the multi-cavity molds. So make more than one part in one molding cycle. That's not enough. Then you go to make a multi-cavity molds, multiple molds, and run on a different machines, or create the multiple mold and machine combination. If that's not enough, then you go with the multiple facilities. And I'm just talking about the US, not outside. So going with the multiple facility, maybe one in the East Coast, one in the West Coast, one in the South, one in the Midwest, run the same component at different to meet the supply and demand. But that's the problem. The plastic part quality is generally defined by the visual or the aesthetic and the dimensional accuracy and the precision or the tolerance range. Now, the single cavity controlling the part quality is not that difficult. But when the number of cavity will increase, that's a big headache, big number of inspections, number of the cost will just increase from 1 cavity to 8 cavity. The same with multiple mold and machine combination for the same component of the same part. That more and more combination. Now you have to not only have to maintain the 1 cavity, but you have to maintain the multiple combination multiplied by with number of cavities for each mold. And the same with the facilities. So now it creates a lot of other issues. What is the batch to batch variation? What is the lot to lot quality control? Then every cultural difference, that every facility may work totally different, even though they are part of the same company. That also raises the issue about the transparency between the organization teams or between different facilities. Even from one process engineer to another process engineer, they will have a different mindset or the different way of developing the status process or the controlling the process. No doubt, and that was the reason there are a lot of government regulations in some of this regulated industry, like a automobile or the medical, to make sure that everyone follows the same guideline. But still, that is leading them to do this process validation. Generally, I work in the medical industry, and it can tell it's very painful. It's so much time consuming. And at the same time, even after you spend 6 to 12 months in a process validation, you still have to do the quality control for the commercial manufacturing or and that production. Many people try to create the shortcut, but ultimately still in a regulated industry, following all these guidelines, increased quality standards, number of the inspections, your time to market is become longer. Then your scrap rate and the energy consumptions are being like almost increased over 400% because you are becoming more stringent. There is no technology that can assist you in improving the quality control, and inspection time, which is very ignored portion, that is contributing the almost 300% increase in the manufacturing cost and time. And a lot of like in an automobile, they have a post-molding operations, and that multiplies the number of quality control stages too. So what is the solution? That going to smart molding factory with Industry 4.0, which is still a very buzzword. It's people now talking about the Industry 5.0 without realizing what is the difference between different 1.0 to 5.0. But so what is the Industry 4.0 is everything is remotely in a cyber world is completed. So you have a molding machine, you have ancillary equipments, you have assembly lines, everything is connected with each other, even the raw material, even the machine timings, everything, resource management, everything is tied up with the one system. But that can be very possible for the metal machining or some those other type of processes, but for molding, that you still need the quality prediction because you are dealing with the multiple variables. So one of the key parts for the Industry 4.0 in the injection molding manufacturing is a quality prediction, that you have to achieve the quality prediction at least at certain level, not fully 100%, but at least maybe 30 to 50% level. So where we are, molding manufacturing. So in since 70s, a lot of molding machines, their capability have been changed. In last maybe few years, a lot of molding machines have a now inbuilt internet connectivity network capability, so you can connect multiple injection molding machines on a shop floor with the network. They have a digital output versus the analog output. They have an integration with the peripheral. So now if you have a hot runner mold, your hot runner controller, your mold temperature controllers, your robotic, your conveyor, everything can be integrated with the machine. And there is a little bit advancement in the computational capability of the machine, so their control system has become faster. There is a more advanced mold instrumentation and the in-mold sensors, but still there is no technology that can provide the real-time quality prediction and monitoring that can tell that this is the dimension you are going to have after ejection, and this is the dimension you will have after 72 hours, or maybe this is the injection dimensions you will have after you do the ultrasonic welding, or after you perform the annealing, or you do the painting. Still, we have to rely on the mechanistic statistical quality control methods, like making those charts, all the after post-molding operations that for the figuring out the quality. And there's a big knowledge gap in the industry, and I think many people will agree that if you go to any custom molders, even though they claim to be medical molders and they have 5 different process engineers, they will have a huge different gap or in the knowledge or the understanding of the process. And there's one of the misconceptions that if you put the tighter tolerance, that means you are going to produce the better part quality. And That's one of the reasons that a lot of scrap and the cost of the validation has been increased. So now, the inspections cost and the time is drastic, like very dramatically ignored. Nobody has still figured that out, and they compared against the overall cost, and that was the one reason that the outsourcing was initiated, that they just eliminate that cost. But so outsourcing to the places where the labor law is cheaper, you think that you are producing the part at the cheaper cost, but you are still putting the same cost and the time maybe into inspections and the quality control. So there are several strategies that people use that again, this thank you very much for Suhas Kulkarni. He let me use one of this 5-pillar pyramid for the quality control. So usually mold, we have a hot runner mold. We put a lot of companies have a strategy to start with the prototype. Then after they go with the large scale, maybe single impression mold to the multi-cavity mold, they use the spill safe conditions. So after running the parts, they think they will change the spill conditions to match the quality specifications. Machines now from electric versus hydraulic, a lot of medical and automobile, they are trying to use the electric machines for being consistent, cleaner, a lot of peripheral integration. The product design, now they applies 5 or 6 critical dimensions instead of 15 dimensions. Maybe try to go with the robust tolerancing and GD&T. I know there are so many companies spend millions of dollars with the consultations, with the consultants to convert their all drawings from the regular linear dimensions to the GD&T. But then they realize that when we have to do the in-process inspection for GD&T, we need a very expensive inspection machines or the equipment. So it's still, and then process again, scientific molding, decouple molding, those are the big fashion word that we go with that's the basic need. Then the DOE is trial and error, but still everything leads to us to the trial and error. That the thing that, okay, which is, and now applying the process monitoring. So still we are relying on the machine sensors where a lot of majority of the companies, they will apply the limits on the every process parameters. And if the machine will display that process parameter out of that spec, it will throw the part away. And then this frequent sampling, again, is increasing the cost. Still, we have to rely on those statistical process controls, which are necessary and important, but at the cost of material wastage. Everything is related around the human, and the human decision that is always driven by bias. So there is a need certain support of the technology that can remove that bias. So a lot of time we use the CAE simulations for the product design or the tool design optimization. We use the advanced inspections methods, cutting the shortcut, like doing the shrinkage study. So instead of waiting for 96 hours, we can use measure the part within 12 hours. There is a theoretical studies we can do, but above that, the best candidate is the in-mold sensors. And now the current in-mold sensors that provided by handful of suppliers, majority of, and it's dominated by the non-US providers, like RJG, Kistler, Priamos, Futaba. Out of that, RJG is the only one company who is a US based. There are but their capability is only limited. All this current in-mold sensors from any company is limited to cavity pressures or the melt temperature measurement. You can use the cavity pressure and the temperature all together to create this PT stack that you can get the pressure and temperature all together. But there is no any other development has been seen with this in-mold sensor since 1980s. And their supporting process monitoring systems are also very they are not that user friendly. They are designed for the molding expert, not for the operator level or the process engineer level person. And if you look at the RJG or the Kistler, many of those, it took them like almost 30 years to change the graphical user interface for this system. So they are not anything advancement. And cost of installation is like over $3,000 per cavity. And if you go, it's still considered as a part of the mold, not a part of the manufacturing. So it is still treated as a capital investment, that you have an 8 cavity mold and you need 2 sensors. That means you are going to spend like the 48 to 50,000 of capital investment into the mold, but it is never considered as a part of the manufacturing or a part of the culture. And still, it will be good for the part sorting, but there is no quality prediction. You can achieve the quality prediction by measuring the shrinkage, which can be possible, but that shrinkage measurement is always literally ignored, thinking that there's no way you can measure the in-mold shrinkage during the molding cycle. And that's why it was never been attempted. So because of why the shrinkage measurement is important, and because it's the intrinsic property of the polymer, shrinkage behavior controls the quality of the molded part, whether it's the aesthetic or the dimension. So if you think about all the scientific molding or the DOE, statistical process control, all the in-mold sensors, everything, that's all the efforts leads us to the controlling the shrinkage, or controlling the variation of the shrinkage in the molded part so you can get the consistent quality. But what if you already know the shrinkage during the molding? Then your life will become very easy. Even you can eliminate the inspections. But these current methods, any of those, they do not have this operability and controllability. That's why for the tighter tolerance part and the multi-cavity mold, controlling the shrinkage, whereas the controlling the quality is a nightmare. And still we have to rely on this machine sensors, cavity pressure. A lot of people use the part weight as one of the part of the quality control, and it's very common. But what about the other factors affecting the shrinkage? And there's so much focus on the automated production, not the manufacturing, and there is a big gap between the production and the manufacturing. Production means you are producing a part in one machine, but manufacturing, if you have multi-component product, you can seamlessly, without performing inspection, you can go through the assembly or the joining, whatever the secondary operation. There is a myth that is impossible to measure and monitor the in-mold shrinkage during the injection molding cycle. And I'm not going to go in this detail, but this shows how it behaves and what are we covered already this information before. So this is the myth buster that I developed several years ago. It's an in-mold shrinkage sensor, which is patented. It's designed based on the button cell type of design, developed fabricated from 316L stainless steel, which is sensor grade stainless steel material. So here is the mechanism that the sensor is placed beneath the ejector pin or the dummy pin. When the plastic melt enters, that plastic melt will exert the force on the pin, which will deflect the diaphragm of the sensor, which is designed to deflect at 5 megapascal, which is like almost the time the melt will come in contact with the pin. And once the part will shrink, the melt will shrink away from this metal steel or the cavity wall. The pressure will decay. When the pressure will reduce below 5 megapascal, the pin will push upward And during this motion, it will measure the in-mold shrinkage. And by knowing that in-mold shrinkage, and if you know the still dimensions, you can calculate the part dimensions at ejection. And you can also measure the pressure using the piezoelectric or any other instrumentation. It's simple. But it's surprisingly nobody even tried about that. As a resolution, you can get at 0.5 micrometer. So for this design verification and validation, we ran the 16-run DOE with 5 factors, with the plaque mold having a 4 different thickness, where we use the 1.5 millimeter and 2.5 millimeter thickness with polypropylene and the HIPS. So one is a semi-crystalline, one is an amorphous material. We use injection molding lab at the University of Lowell, and I was still a student there. So this is the results. So look at that, you can see the sensor location that now the fill stage. Now sensor is fully activated. Now part is cooling down. Once it cools down, and it will move upward while still remaining in a contact with the plastic part and without deforming the plastic part. And this is the kind of a typical profile that for the 1.5 millimeter thickness, and this is for the HIPS, like for different thicknesses. So now we calculated the part dimensions, measured the part dimensions at the same location at the shrinkage, and if you correlate them, it's like a almost 97 to 97% correlation for HIPS, 95% correlation for HIPS at the thicker cavity, and 94% correlation for polypropylene at the thinner cavity, and around 0.8% at the thicker cavity. So polypropylene being a semi-crystalline material, it shrinks, and the bigger the cavity thickness, higher the shrinkage. And in semi-crystalline, it shrinks faster and magnitude is larger. So also the semi-crystalline material will take certain time, especially polypropylene will change the dimensions. So that we assume that could be the reason. But ultimately, the one of the goal was to measure the in-mold shrinkage was successful. That there was a myth that you cannot measure the in-mold shrinkage during the molding cycle. And again, looking at the performance, even though it has a 97% correlation for the HIPS, 95% for the polypropylene for the smaller thickness, but we still think that for the semi-crystalline or the certain material, the single mold shrinkage sensor is not enough. It needs to have more than just a shrinkage that we need to. So that's where all the brainstorming started. We ended up being this second generation multivariate shrinkage sensor, which is an ejector pin style, 6 millimeter diameter. That's a standard ejector pin hardened. Then again, there was a time like a lot of people said, oh, how can it's not possible to measure 3 or 4 process output from one sensor. A lot of even sensor manufacturers mentioned that it's not possible. So we use the infrared technology for the melt temperature, thermistor for the mold temperature, piezoelectric for the cavity pressure, and no very new mechanism other than compared to the single mode for the in-mold shrinkage. So, and this sensor can be function or the operate or use up to 300 degrees C melt temperature and the 120 degrees C mold temperature. So it covers very wide material range too. So what you can get is the part dimension prediction, and from you can also derive the PVT behavior, the rheology, further the viscoelastic behavior, and it will provide the complete process synthesis for process versus quality, which the current sensors are not capable of doing. So similar to one of the animation you saw during the single mode shrinkage sensor, as soon as the melt comes into contact with the IR temperature sensing unit, the entire sensor will move backward 0.5 millimeter. There is a hard stop, so at 0.5 millimeter it will stop, and the sensor remains put through that 0.5 millimeter inside the cavity. So as soon as the melt comes into contact with the sensor pin or the head, it will measure the temperature, melt temperature. It is continuously measuring the mold temperature too, and also as soon as the melt comes into contact with the pin, it will start measuring the cavity pressure throughout the molding cycle, and the same with the in-mold shrinkage. So it generally, from one sensor, you can we get 4 signals, digital or analog, that however we want to program the shrinkage, cavity pressure, melt temperature, and mold temperature. And the way this entire sensor is built, there is no need for external amplification or the signal conditioners that the current sensors require. So that eliminates that additional cost. So again, look at how does that work. The same mold we use, but in this time, instead of 1.5 millimeter and 2.5 millimeter cavity thickness, we use 3.5 millimeter cavity thickness. So we want to go thicker. Again, you can see from that as soon as the melt comes into contact with the shrinkage sensor, you can get the shrinkage, melt temperature, mold temperature, and pressure, which is very... So again, you can measure multiple process output from one sensor without having complex instrumentation. And you can achieve the multidimensional. How that, like, you can first of all create the entire PVT cycle for the any injection molding cycle, that you can create the, and based on that PVT you can also estimate the isometric and anisometric in-mold shrinkage as well as the post-mold shrinkage, and you can use both shrinkage for the part quality prediction for any use condition. That if you are going to use this any part at like 40 degrees centigrade, so, and 60% relative humidity or this ambient pressure, you can estimate. So you want to create this worst case scenario for your functionality verification for any product or the part, you can do that. So again, the same, we measured the part thickness at the sensor location and the calculated the part thickness from the sensor data. For HIPS, we got 94% correlation, and polypropylene, it's 82. It improved a little bit, but it didn't improve, so we're still working on that. We are still, and we know where we need to work for improving the polypropylene correlation. But still, again, it's way better than any other technology available. So same way, we estimated the melt velocity within the melt during the molding cycle. Same with the melt viscosity. Still, it needs some work for the. There is still room for improvement. Especially melt velocity, we think the response time is not as fast as we would like to for the faster injection speed. When the injection speed is above 3 inch per second, or the 75 or 80 millimeter per second, like that, a minute, sorry, it's not fast enough. Below that speed, it is enough. Same way with the melt viscosity estimation, it is pretty accurate. It's not 95% or 99% yet, but and again it needs the cross verification for with the cross WLF equation, but still it gives a very good accuracy for the melt viscosity and velocity. And again, it's still very accurate compared to what people are trying to measure, estimate the viscosity or velocity using the thermocouple type of temperature sensor or the in-mold cavity pressure sensor. So it's still, so generally use of this can provide the faster process development, and it just gives you overall process observability that whenever as soon as the melt enters inside the cavity, how it behaves, how it reacts. So it gives all the viscoelastic behavior, stress selection, in-mold stresses, everything you can estimate from that. So what is the work in progress? So we realize that the current control systems are not that user-friendly. And when I say that user-friendly or easy to understand, that can be, and whenever any person will look at the control system graphical user interface, the person can understand without having a knowledge of injection molding, or without minimum knowledge of the injection molding, can understand that, okay, this is the good part, this is the bad part, this is the good quality control, this is the bad quality control, this is what it is happening with this part. You don't need to go and explain or create the entire thesis about that. So especially when you are working with the operator or the leadership, a lot of leadership, they have a good engineering background, but not necessarily they are molding expert. They just want to see something that can give them a right away understanding. They don't want to go to the all scientific detail. For them is so that was one of our goal, and to create the closed loop interface. So we can acquire the data, apply all the analysis model, part specification, then it will do all this process data synthesis. Half of the work will be done on the sensor side, then quality control, and create this true closed loop interface. I know many industry people, especially medical, oh, we can't have the closed loop interface. We can't have any technology that can change the process. That's okay. As long as you can do the process within that your validator range, it should be fine. That's why you are performing the validation. And size also matters. So this is the kind of a $50,000, maybe it's just, yeah, $60,000 stack with the $100 bill. So that's kind of a size. What it will do. So right now we are somewhere around 2.5 industry, considering that rounding like industry 3.0, that we can move forward to 3.5 to 4. And again, the quality prediction is the critical. If you cannot provide the accurate quality prediction, any technology, or you have to still rely on the regression models or the lot of statistical, like some of this in-mold sensing technology providers do that. They collect the cavity pressure information and then measure the part and create these regression models, and then after they feed into their system. But it's, again, if you want to do all these things, it's sort of any technology that provides directly those predictions. That's important. So by doing that, you can save at least 30% in a time and a cost related to the inspection. Like those inspection reduction will reduce your manufacturing cost by 30% at least. And again, remote manufacturing and transparency is very important. So that's one of the heart or the key part of the Industry 4.0. So we are not talking about cutting down the job or the resources, but better utilization of the job, or while certain situation you can still continue with your manufacturing. So we know there are a lot of success, but there's always a room for improvement. As soon as 6 millimeter sensor pin diameter, a lot of people will say, oh, we can't use that. We have a very small parts, especially medical device industry. And the 90% of medical device industry people will just stop listening to you as soon as they will know it's a 6 millimeter sensor head pin. And happened to us many times, like, yeah, oh yeah, we have a like very small part, we cannot, it's too big. End of story. So we are still working on the another design which replaces the infrared temperature measurement to the thermocouple or the different type of a temperature sensing, which is still more accurate than the infrared, similar to fiber optics or the thermocouple. That can reduce the pin size to almost 2 millimeter to 3 millimeter. And again, we see that the amorphous material, 97% of the quality can be explained by the in-mold shrinkage alone. Then do we need the temperature sensing for them or not? So if don't, then we can reduce that pin size to 1 millimeter. So it can be like very small. It can give you the pressure and the shrinkage, and you can use to at any temperature range, and you can still predict the part quality very accurately. You can still use the smaller part, and then you still don't have that resistance of using a new technology. So what it will do, that it will also reduce the overall size of the sensor body, that the sensor body stays within the ejector system. That means you don't have to place the sensor on the B side. You can place the sensor on the any direction, even on the slide or in the, so it's everything can be customized. Now we are know that there is a little bit more work required to improve the prediction or the shrinkage measurement accuracy for the semi-crystalline material, and especially for the thicker part thickness or part thickness above 2.5 millimeter or 2.0 millimeter. And as we know that the major customers will be, or the market will be, the medical device and automotive or the regulatory industry. So our future work is concentrated on to create the protocol or installation qualification protocol, or some that the current sensor technologies do not have, to provide that type of support to the medical device industry, so they can include as a part of their validations too. So what is we are targeting the commercial launch for this sensor between 2021 and 2023. It's a long time period, just thanks to the COVID situation. It could have been a very shorter, but we have to deal with that. So the target price is, we are going to targeting as a $2,000 per sensor. That includes the installation cost. There's no additional cables or amplification units, and everything is required like other sensors or other technologies. Everything is integrated, direct digital output. You can plug and play. So there's less chances of damage, automated programmable calibration. And we already have a design for wireless sensor too. So there is no cable will require in the future, most likely 2022 or 2023 onwards. So you just place the sensor inside the mold and you can monitor. The same with the control system, the same range as the multivariate. So we are going to create this entire multivariate shrinkage sensing technology package. That's the sensor plus the control system. And we'll have like a remote monitoring with the cloud or the server interface. No, many regulated companies, they don't like to store things on a cloud, but you can still create your local cloud or the server that you can store your data with the time stamping. So nobody, and you can create the closed loop integration with entire manufacturing. So not only the production, but you can also create the automated manufacturing definitely you are going to reduce the inspection. Even though you reduce one dimension in certain product, that can save 10% or more in the time and the cost. And that was my last slide. I went a little bit over than I estimated, but any question and answer, I'm open for that.
Great, thank you, Raul. I have a few questions started, so hopefully they'll start or keep coming in, I should say. First question I have is, what's the life of the sensor and repeatability of the sensor over a few 100,000 cycles?
Yeah, so we designed the sensor. Generally, the molds are manufactured for 1 million or 2 million cycles. So definitely, you don't want any sensor or anything that you have to replace or the change every few thousand or every few 100,000 cycles. So yeah, that was generally our design is like around 1 million cycle. That's what the starting point for the design is.
Great. Along that, is there any need for frequent calibration?
No. So generally, it has a inbuilt programmable microcontroller that you can. It will automatically calibrate, or it will tell you that anything is off, calibrate off to the calibration. But if you want to perform the calibration, definitely you can send to the company back, and we can do that calibration.
Excellent. Is there any complex machining required for the mold to install these?
No, that's one of the reasons that it's an ejector pin type design. Just needs a 6 millimeter, or if you reduce the size of the pin, that whatever the sensor head pin diameter, that's what the simple drill you require on the B side, and the rest of the part stays in the ejection system. Yes, currently right now that the remaining part is a bigger. The sensor body is like 23 millimeter diameter. So if you are going with very large number of cavitation, maybe 16 cavity or something, and the part size is not that big enough, then there may be, we need to think different strategy. But as such, it's still, there's no special machining requirement. Like you don't have to make any special, the grooves or the special features that can increase your mold cost or the machining cost of the mold.
Excellent. Another great question here is to the applicability to glass and other reinforced resin grades.
Yes, yeah. It can be used for any plastic material.
Excellent. How do you validate for the medical industry?
Sorry, can you repeat again?
Yeah, absolutely. How do you validate for the medical industry?
So one of the things in the medical industry is that, yeah, it's a regulation. There are different regulations from the FDA, and it's many of these regulations, they vary depending on the class, medical class, whether it's a class 1, class 2, class 3. So and then after that needs that entire process development, validation, IQ, OQ, PQ in the medical industry to make sure that whatever the process you are developing, that will produce the good part. In the same way, in any of the new technologies you are introducing to your manufacturing or the production that has any predictability or the decision-making capability, that you also need to validate. That's to make sure that it's a consistent and precise. That if the sensor data will produce or predict this, calculate this, or estimate this X dimension, that is going to do the same even after certain number of time or any variation. So the same process that, and that's again, that's one of the biggest part or future work goal is to even work with the medical industry, even partner with the medical industry, and then create that protocol that can help. And many of the time, many of the medical industry, they have a cavity pressure sensors or Commonio or EDART or mold marshalling, all the system, but they don't use as a part of their production, just because there is no support or there is no protocol created for the validating this new or these technologies on the medical manufacturing.
Excellent, great, Raul, thank you. There's a question, what about part shrinkage that happens post-molding?
Yeah, so that's one of the things. So once you know the in-mold shrinkage, there are two ways you can calculate the post-molding shrinkage. And I can go back one of these slides. This is the one more complex way. You are ejecting the part here, and it's going to cool down at the room temperature. So that if you know the material's thermal expansion coefficient, you know your ejection temperature, that may be 60 degree or 70 degree, and you know your ambient temperature, which is 23 degree, maybe 30 degree, whatever. From that, you can calculate the linear post-mold shrinkage. That's one. That's again, you can go apply more complex mathematical model using the sensor data to refine this post-mold shrinkage for any conditions. That's one of the things I repeated many times, that I know there were, we ran into some problem that like, okay, there's a medical device component, there are 2 or 3 parts, they are being ultrasonic, there's an ultrasonic welding, and their part being shipped from New England to Texas. And because during this transportation temperature change, all the climatic condition change, those ultrasonic welding was breaking off, and major reason was the change in this stress or the shrinkage of the part because of the thermal expansion and the contraction. So some of those kind of things, you can, once you know that for every part, you can predict that for every part.
Great, Raul, thank you. Next question is, can existing tools with RJG sensors be retrofitted?
Yes. So right now, as I mentioned, that one of the things right now is our sensor pin is 6 millimeter. As long as that you have a 6 millimeter ejector pin, you can use that. And another thing is we are also working on that to find out the better location. So I know there is a lot of people in medical industry, as I mentioned, they become very reluctant to even listen to you just because they are molding the smaller part. But a lot of them, they are molding a smaller part from very expensive material, like a medical grade PEEK or the medical grade Alchem. They are so expensive material. And they have to run that on a cold runner because they are high temperature. So that's one of the things is we are also looking into that if we can use the sensor on the runner location around there instead of the cavity, and how accurate it can function. So that's another thing is we even don't have to retrofit, or even you can still use for the smaller components or the mold with the many cavities, like 32 cavity or 64 cavity, where you don't have to spend that much money.
Great. Next question here. I would assume that the warpage effects are outside the initial capabilities of the technology. Is that correct?
Can you repeat again? So I just try to understand one more time.
Yeah. This individual would assume that warpage effects are outside the initial capabilities of the technology.
So the warpage is what is the warpage? Warpage is the post-mold shrinkage. or the stress is uneven in a constrained or the unconstrained direction. So here you can see there is a constrained direction and unconstrained direction. There the shrinkage or the stress will be different. So if you know with all these 4 or 5 process out within the cavity time, you can also understand that behavior too. And that's where it comes with these further analytical models that you can viscoelastic behavior model that utilizes the real-time temperatures, real-time pressures, real-time shrinkage, all, and that will give you also the estimation of out-of-plane warp, the dimension, that's a warpage too. So that's one of the biggest benefit, besides the in-mode shrinkage, having the multivariate capability of the sensor, that you can go beyond dimensional. You can go with this warpage or the maybe in a semi-crystalline material for the percentage crystallinity during the molding. Those kind of a aspect you can also predict. And everything is step by step. But first, if you want to just care about the dimensions, you need only in-mode shrinkage.
Wonderful. Now, this question is revolving around the liquid silicone rubber or LSR applications, and can you use your technology in that?
Yes. Yeah.
When it is available, what kind of training will be offered?
So the training, so that's one of the thing is we always like to be different. So this is going to be the part of our continuous commitment with our customers or our users, I would say, because our customer will be somebody else. Our end user will be the operator or the process engineers or the validation engineers that will be our end users. So that's ongoing. It's a part of the technical support that will be more per mold or the per year, or that way that like if you need any assistance in validation, process development, utilizing the sensors capability, anything that will be beyond the training, beyond the certification, that we are not going to create the certifications. We are going to create beyond the relationship. That's what the plan is.
Excellent. So has testing been done to determine the difference between the melt temperature, your sensor, and the nozzle?
So right now, that's one of the things is the nozzle temperature and the cavity the temperature. You are measuring directly the melt temperature into the cavity. So that's what the main important thing. And then one of the example I can give that there was one of the mold I was running made for the PBT, where the nozzle temperature was incorrect. It was the thermocouple had a malfunctioning. So instead of the actual melt temperature was way 150 degree higher at the nozzle, but where the cavity, the part will come as a very brittle part. So as soon as that's why if you know what is the temperature of the melt inside the cavity, that will directly give you idea about there's something wrong at your nozzle side or your head partner side or your machine side, because you are now knowing the actual temperature of the melt which is flowing within your cavity. If your machine will show you that 450 degree Fahrenheit, but we know that temperature, this sensor shows 475 degree Fahrenheit, there's something going on. There's a shear heating or something is malfunctioning, something. So that's more important to instead of comparing with the nozzle. So
what type of displacement is typical for the shrink sensor? What kind of witness marks would you expect? Debossed, embossed?
So the same, yeah, the same as the ejector pin mark. So yeah, so our travel is very, so 0.5, the sensor pin moves about 0.5 millimeter when when it comes into contact with the melt. So the 0.5 millimeter is way above than typical the shrinkage that the part will experience. So if you have a, like say 3 millimeter and your shrinkage rate is 0.02 millimeter per millimeter, then you are still well around that. So you are, that was one of the reason in the single mode to this one that we we refine the design such a way that it won't leave any excess mark or any deformation or anything on the plastic part. And that's where that all these 5 megapascal or the 3 megapascal calculations that our design that we utilize, that will only leave the mark just similar to ejection pin that at the end of the ejection.
Great. A question here regarding transverse versus axial shrinkage. Does the sensor account for this? And what about parts that don't adhere to normal design considerations, such as thin walls over long run?
Yeah, so generally the thin wall that we found that the sensor is very accurate for the thin wall. So if there is a thin wall, that your dimension prediction capability of the sensor will be very high. And generally, the measuring the shrinkage at the thickness is the most accurate, because a lot of people say transverse shrinking at the length or shrinking at the width. But if you measure the shrinkage on the thickness, that will give you very accurate shrinkage and the dimension prediction capability than thinking about the length. Ultimately, you have a part is a longer part, but that your flow of the melt flow is controlled by the thickness of your cavity. So yeah, you have a one like 3 millimeter and another section is a 1 millimeter. That can be a different story. That's a drastic change in the thickness. But like doesn't matter that your thickness, like the measuring the shrinkage at the thickness we don't have to worry much about the transverse biaxial, like the transverse or the linear X or Y direction shrinkage.
All right. Will these sensors handle the mold temperatures that peak material require?
So right now, the sensor can handle up to 120 to 150 degrees centigrade, and that's one of our next goal is to increase that the melt temperature above 300 degrees C and the mold temperature above 150 degrees C. So I know there are certain material like PEEK or Ultem, and they are very high, like specialty materials, high temperature materials. Even a lot of electronics products they use this material. Medical devices, definitely implantable devices, they use Ultem, PEEK, those materials very quite often. And that's one of the goal is to go towards make as wide as or as high as the operating conditions as possible. So you can utilize wide range of different materials.
Raul, I might ask real quickly for you to put up a contact slide for you. That way, if there's questions that come up after this, they can still get a hold of you directly. Or
yeah,
the Leonine website.
Yeah, they can, and that's my email is my first name Rahul. Maybe I can just type here at the end, so I can just.
Yeah, we have a few questions left here, and we're getting kind of long on time. So if there's other questions, you can reach out to Raul directly. But
yeah, I'll be more than happy to answer all the questions, even discuss any other thing. So yeah, you can reach out to me. Email is the best option. I generally have a habit of replying my emails within 3 hours, and worst condition 24 hours. I do not ignore emails. So I believe in communication very strongly. So if you even send me text message, you will receive the yes or no or single word answer even within like 3 hours, less than 3 hours. I follow that very religiously, that the communicating on a promptly. So yeah.
Here's a question around output, Raul. What will the system output? Is it control of the molding machine, a predicted dimension, etc.?
So the system output you can use multiple ways. One is to get the part quality prediction that you can use to minimize the inspection or inspection reduction. That's one big benefit. And many people who are work with this quality or the process, they know that how expensive it gets with the number of increased inspections. Second is to also create the closed loop interface with the machine. So create this intelligent architect that your quality predictions, your melt flow or the melt behavior during your process, and utilizing all that information to tell machine that change your parameters this way, like, so you can continuously maintain that consistent quality and the consistent. So one of the things is a lot of cavity pressure sensors, cavity people use that. Okay, yeah, if your cavity pressure goes above 70 bar or 100 bar, reject the part. But then you have a HIPS and ABS, if you're running the very similar grade, you are running a wrong material, but your cavity pressure ranges will be the almost same. So, and that's what, it's not a true closed loop. The true closed loop is to analyze the quality and tell machine that instead of filling at that pressure or instead of filling at this speed, you do this. So that's kind of the true industry 4.0 is, not the internet connectivity and connecting everything together. So that's what the goal we are moving forward. So starting with maybe 10%, 20%, 30% the inspection reduction to going to highest level.
Great. Yeah, lump these last three, they're all pretty standard questions, okay? The first one is, will there be any beta test opportunities?
Yes, there will be. And that's, I apologize that I should have mentioned that. I didn't want to make it too commercial, or so I will make more informative way. Yes, yeah, there will be a beta testing opportunity. And if you think that you would like to try, definitely you can reach out to me, and we can definitely set up that. And we are also trying to do more improvisation. Then maybe the sensor you saw the picture today, maybe year after will be way sophisticated. Right now you might have seen some wires and everything, but it will be totally different than this. But so definitely there will be a lot more beta testing opportunity, and we would like to do industry testing as much as possible with wide range of product, material, everything. Yes.
Wonderful. When will the product be available to try out at a customer's?
So that's what I mentioned, that unfortunately a lot of we are a kind of a victim of all this COVID thing. So we were estimating by the end of this year to at least try at the customer's place, or then the beta testing, or putting in an actual mold, or the R&D type of pilot plot type of mold. But yeah, so in short, maybe somewhere in the 2021 for sure.
Wonderful. Looks like the final question I have here for you, Raul, is what's the cost of the data acquisition system? I know you'd mentioned something per sensor, but as a total data acquisition system, what would?
So that was this. There are two thought process here. So we want to keep the data acquisition system is definitely cheaper than the commercial other data acquisition or the process monitoring system. I don't foresee to keep more than $7,000 or $7,500 per system, and that's dedicated to one machine, not to one mold. So the one machine, if you are running 10 molds, you can use the same system. There is another, the other way is to reduce the system price very drastically, but also provide the subscription for the cloud or the server data management and the so we are also exploring one of the things in short that everything can be done on a cloud or on the remote server. So you just don't need any specific control system that can be. So maybe there will be a free of cost, or maybe there is a $7,500. That's kind of what we're targeting.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself, Bennett and Len Hampton, everybody at Sodick. Say thank you, Raul, and to everybody who turned in today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for Len, Westin, Bennett for setting, and they've been asking me, and then after I think there was 2 or 3 times we changed our plan, but thank you very much again, and thank you everyone. If anybody has a question, here is my email. You can just send me an email, and again, I'll get back to you very promptly.
Excellent. Thanks, Raul. A couple quick things before we go. If there are copies available of the webinar, so reach out to one of the 3 of us here, Len, Bennett, or West, and Len Hampton, Bennett, Howard, West, and Harbot, Sodick, and we can get you a copy of it. And as Bennett mentioned, there's some great ones coming up here in the near future. Starting on the 7th of October with Foster, 14th of October is MTD, 28th will be XTOL, and then we have 3 or 4 more lined up after that. So look forward to hearing from you guys and tune in for those. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.